Today, I'm going to share with you the results of my ADHD and ASD screening tests. Welcome to my channel. My name is Kate. I'm a 29-year-old Australian who's recently decided to start sharing my life with the internet. I mostly do lifestyle content, including videos on mental health, budgeting, goal setting, and vlog content. Just a quick disclaimer before we get into today's video. I'm in no way any sort of mental health professional. Everything I talk about today is from my own experiences and research and should in no way be considered advice. While I hope this can help to show people the process of getting diagnosed, it is also not a reflection of how your diagnosis journey may occur. Everything here is meant for entertainment purposes only. With that out of the way, let's get on with the video. If you missed my previous videos about my ADHD and ASD testing, I will link the playlist up here if you want to check them out. For a quick overview, I decided to do some screening tests for both ADHD and ASD with my psychologist this year. I've had 2 sessions with her going through the questions in the DSM-5, and I also did 3 multiple choice quizzes digitally. I've now had an additional session with her to discuss the results of my multiple choice quizzes, as well as her opinions based on the interview style questions. Unfortunately, psychologists aren't able to give an official diagnosis, but she was able to give me a pretty clear idea of what might happen if I were to pursue a proper diagnosis. We ended up spending the entire 1-hour session just going over the results. She gave me the full reports from both the ADHD and ASD quizzes that I did online. The 3rd quiz that I did was just an anxiety quiz to test if my symptoms may be more related to anxiety than to ADHD or ASD. But my results from that came back normal, so I didn't get the report from that one. She did offer, but it didn't seem necessary given that the results were normal anyway. We started by going over the results from the ADHD quiz. This quiz provided insight into the symptoms I was experiencing as well as the impact that they were having on my life. For the symptoms, I scored the exact number that you needed to get on or above to have symptoms that are considered to be highly consistent with an ADHD diagnosis, which is around the middle of the scoring. My score for the impact of ADHD was also right in the middle. So, according to the quiz, I do have symptoms consistent with ADHD and they are having an impact on my life, but not in a severe way. The results then added my scores together to give a total and converted that into a percentage. The percentage was based on the results of a study completed by people in the general population, so not just people with ADHD. Even though my scores in both categories were somewhere in the middle, my results actually translated to 95.6%. This means I scored higher than 95.6% of other typical adults in my age range. This seemed surprisingly high to me. I feel like my concept of the number of people in the world with ADHD is a bit skewed at the moment. So much of my life is spent in the online and gaming spaces. I feel like a large percentage of people in those areas seem to have ADHD. The fact that I've been searching for ADHD-related information is also probably impacting my view of this. And a quick Google search says that from a 2016 study, only 2.8% of the world's population have ADHD. One thing I quite liked about the results from this quiz is that if you score below the cutoff on the symptoms quiz, but score highly enough on the questions that address the level of impact the symptoms have on your life, you can still be considered for an ADHD diagnosis. We then went over the results from my ASD quiz. While the ADHD quiz only compared my results to that of the general population, the ASD quiz gave me a percentile on both the general population as well as compared to the results of the ASD community. My overall score for this one was, again, somewhere in the middle. My results were above the cutoff for potential diagnosis, meaning that my responses were consistent with an ASD diagnosis. As for my percentiles, I was only 8.3% when compared to the ASD responses, but compared to the general population, I got 99.8%. That seems extremely high, although according to the CDC, only 1% of the world's population have ASD, so I guess it makes sense. We also went over my responses to the discussion style questions from the DSM that we worked through in the previous sessions. As I believe I said in a previous video, it's been a while, I had a large amount of the ADHD symptoms and was able to give examples from my life for most of the indicators of ADHD. The ASD questions were a little less obvious, and I didn't have a strong result either way from these questions in regards to ASD. So for the overall results, my psychologist does believe that I have ADHD, but is uncertain about the ASD. ADHD and ASD are not her area of speciality. She obviously knows a little bit about each of them, but she did say she wasn't able to give a definite opinion either way on the ASD. Basically, everything went as I expected. The ADHD results came back as a strong likelihood, and the ASD was a bit less obvious, so there weren't really any surprises, but I did feel good after the session. Learning that it is highly likely that I have ADHD may seem like a bad thing to a lot of people, but for me, it's good to know why it is that I am the way I am. It's not like I was told something new about my personality that I don't like. I've just been able to put a name to it. One of my friends congratulated me on having ADHD, and again, it feels weird, but I was totally there for it. So I could leave the diagnosis at this point. Especially with the ADHD, I could decide that my psychologist thinking it is highly likely is enough for me to say that I have ADHD. And now that I've learned about cognitive assessments and that I could have a bunch of stuff tested, like my neural processing speed, communication skills, and IQ, as well as my ADHD and ASD, I would actually really like to do one of those. My psychologist has sent me some recommendations for places that she's aware of that do assessments, which is something that I still need to look into. They are a bit on the pricier side, but because it is covering all of these different topics, I think it's worth it for me. I could also go directly to a psychiatrist, which would probably be the cheaper option, but I'm just so curious about the results that I could get and the information that I could find out about myself by doing a full cognitive assessment. My recommendation for this week, again, trying to stay on theme, is a podcast called ADHD for Smartass Women with Tracy Otsuka. It's an interview-style podcast where the host, Tracy, chats with their guest, who is always a female who has ADHD and has been successful in some way. Most of them are entrepreneurs with their own successful business, and they discuss how they manage their lives and work with ADHD. They also usually discuss the guest's diagnosis as well as some of their best hints and tips for dealing with their ADHD. This podcast has really helped me to realise the benefits that come with ADHD, as well as hearing from people that have managed to be successful despite their ADHD. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe. I also do a variety of lifestyle content, including budgeting, goal setting, and vlogs, so if any of that interests you, I'd love to have you back sometime. I also stream video games live over on Twitch. I'll put the link to that and my Instagram in the description if you're interested.